Hello, fellow book readers. Today we are going to talk about my top 10 favorite cliffhangers of all time in fantasy. So we've all read books with giant cliffhangers at the end where it's just like, why did the book end here? What is going to happen? And you have to wait to read the next book to figure out what happened to a person, a character, a plot, an arc, something. And sometimes it's just cheap to do that, but other times cliffhangers really work and drive up anticipation and tension for the next book. I don't like when every book ends in a cliffhanger, but I do like an occasional cliffhanger. And I got 10 books here that I'm not going to put in any particular order. This isn't going to be 10 to 1. It's just going to be my 10 favorite fantasy cliffhangers. And I want to talk about each of them a little bit. Now, there will be some spoilers in this video, but I will warn you beforehand. I'm going to put a list of the books down below that I'm going to talk about in order, and I'll put some timestamps too. Let's start with the 3 books that I actually don't own physical copies of that I want to talk about. So the first book I want to talk about is Changes by Jim Butcher. This is the 12th book in the Dresden Files. And this has a giant cliffhanger. And by the title of the book, I probably should have seen it coming because it is a big change for the series. But it has this big climax where everything turns out kind of okay for our protagonist. Not great, but kind of okay. It's like, yeah, we eliminated this group of vampires and now the world is changing because of it. It's both a good and a bad thing. And there were big heroic sacrifices that had to happen. So you think, yeah, that's the end. And then right at the end, Harry Dresden, the main character, gets killed. Which is very interesting because this is a single point of view series. The entirety of the series is in Harry's point of view. And this isn't the last book in the series. It continues on past this. So how is that going to work? And I knew that going in. I knew there were more than 12 books going in. So like when I got to that part at the end of Changes, I was absolutely shocked. It was a shocking change. Now I did feel it was a little cheap because I knew, well, Harry Dresden can't be gone forever because he's the only point of view character. But how were they going to handle that in the next book? It was such a good cliffhanger. The second book I want to talk about is Empire of the Damned by J. Kristoff. This is the second book in the Empire of the Vampire trilogy. And at the end of this book, the Holy Grail, Dior, dies. Now, Dior is this child that our main character, Gabriel de Leon, and his sister, who is a vampire, are trying to protect. They need her to end the curse, to end the long night. And that seems to be the main part of the story. So you don't expect anything major to happen before book 3 involving Dior, but she dies at the end of book 2. And it's like, well, what's going to happen now? How are they going to end the curse? And the scene that she dies in is super, super tragic. And you're left wondering, what the hell did I just read? What is going to happen? And it's actually shouldn't be that shocking because the story is told Interview for a Vampire style, and you're left with plenty of hints that Dior is going to die before the end of the series. And I think it was a great way to end the book because even though you're told that it's going to happen, you don't actually think it's going to happen. But on top of that, the book gives you like a little epilogue that leaves you questioning, is she actually dead or not? And it's a very interesting thing. I really thought that cliffhanger was written extremely well. I think J. Kristoff has like a pretty unique style of writing. I love his prose and the word choices he uses. It's kind of flowery, but not like, I wouldn't call it like Shakespearean. It's interesting. And the third book I want to talk about is The Tower of the Swallow by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the 6th book in the Witcher series. And in this book, you mainly follow Ciri, the young girl who Gabriel and Yennefer are trying to take care of, and they're trying to reunite with her because she's been missing or on the run or kidnapped for 4 straight books now. And this book, she's in extreme danger, and it culminates in this great climax on the ice. It's the best climax in the series, in my opinion. This is also my favorite book in the series. And at the end, it appears like Ciri has gotten away. She still hasn't reunited with Gabriel and Yennefer, but you expect that to happen now that she got into the Tower of the Swallow. But the book ends with her going through this portal and teleporting to this land with like elves. And she says hi to this elf at the end. And the elf basically says, "We've been waiting for you." And at that moment, you realize maybe she's not going to reunite with Geralt and Yennefer. And what happened? Is she actually safe in this portal? Is she not? We don't actually know because the book just ends. And it's such a good cliffhanger. It's different from a lot of the other cliffhangers on this list because we don't know for sure that Ciri's in any danger or not. She may be, she may not be, she may be safe, she may not be. Is she going to reunite with them? We don't know. The book ends this great climax with this great cliffhanger where you don't actually know what exactly happened. Okay, let's talk about some of the books I own physical copies of now. And the fourth cliffhanger I want to talk about is from the Two Towers, the second Lord of the Rings book. Now, unlike the Two Towers movie, this book ends with the plot of my nightmares, basically. So Frodo goes into Shelob's lair in the Two Towers book, not the Return of the King book, in the Two Towers book. And this book ends with Frodo incapacitated by Shelob, and then Sam beats Shelob, but then the orcs come and take Frodo's body with them. And we don't know what's happening. We think Frodo's alive, but we're not 100% sure. And we know that Frodo has now been captured by the orcs and is unconscious, surrounded by spider webs. And we don't know the fate of the ring. It's a gigantic cliffhanger. It's a thing of my nightmares. Giant spiders. I have severe arachnophobia. So this cliffhanger hit even harder for me because of the fright that I had while reading it, but also how desperate the quest was. And it seems like, how is Sam going to beat a bunch of orcs to get Frodo back? Is Frodo even alive? Is Sauron going to get the ring? Like, what's going to happen? It's a giant cliffhanger, and I think it works really well. So people that say cliffhangers are like a new thing in fantasy, they're wrong. You can go back to the series that made fantasy a genre that people want to write in, and it exists there too. Next, let's talk Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in her Six of Crows duology. This is my favorite heist fantasy. I like it more than I like Mistborn. I like it more than I like some of the other heist fantasies I've read. I love this heist, but the end of this book is so unfair. It's just an unfair ending. They finally succeeded in the heist. They break into the prison that's impossible to break into. They get everything out that they need to get out. It's perfect. Perfect plan. They did everything right. Yeah, there were some struggles. Some things didn't go exactly according to plan, but it happened. It worked. And then they get back, and the person that they made a deal with reneges on the deal and kidnaps Inej, one of the key members of the Six of Crows, the group of six. And that's how the book ends. And you're wondering, how are they going to be able to save her? Are they going to be able to? What is going to happen next? And unlike some of the other cliffhangers in this one that involve people that are captured, this one feels markedly unfair because they did everything that they were supposed to do. They did everything right. They weren't going against somebody that they thought was an enemy at that point. So yeah, this one was shocking and led to some new tension going into the next book because I didn't know what the tension was going to be going into Crooked Kingdom because they did everything right in Six of Crows. But the cliffhanger sets it up perfectly. Next up, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is the first book in the Shepherd King duology. And this book ends with a giant cliffhanger. Rachel Gillig is a master of cliffhangers. Every first book she writes almost has a cliffhanger in it. It's insane. But they all work. Even though you see them coming from a mile away, they work. And this one is no exception. I was blown away by this cliffhanger. It was so frightening and it made me mad, but also it made me just want to pick up the next book and read it right away to see what happens. So in this book, our main character, Elspeth, is infected by this card. And this card contains a monster called the Nightmare that is now living in her head. And anytime Elspeth gives it permission to do anything, it basically starts taking over her body more and more. And she's getting to a point where she won't be able to get her body back. It's going to belong to the monster, the Nightmare. And there's this sort of evil prince and conspiracy going on in this kingdom. It's a very atmospheric book. At the end of this, Elspeth is finally caught by the prince. He realizes she has a disease, and people with diseases are sent into the woods, never to come back. So she gives the Nightmare permission to take over her body to destroy the prince. And that's what happens. But she has to give herself all away. So she becomes the Nightmare. So the book ends with the prince basically mortally wounded, and she's now the Nightmare, and now she's in prison for attacking the prince. And that's how the book ends, with her in prison. And you see Raven come to see her in prison, and it's frightening because you realize it's no longer Elspeth. And I think it's such a great cliffhanger, partially because you do see it coming, and you keep like wishing that Elspeth won't take that next step. Like, please don't become the monster. Please don't become the monster. You can't become the monster because then you can't come back. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Until she's finally forced into a corner and forced to do it, and then the book just ends, and you don't know, can she get her body back? What's going to happen? Hey, next up is Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan. This is the 10th book in the Wheel of Time series. And this book is usually considered the worst in the series. For me, it's my second least favorite in the series, and that's mainly just because it has no plot. Now, it has some great character work in it, but it has almost no plot until the end when you get a cliffhanger where Egwene gets captured by the White Tower. Egwene is the leader of the rebel Aes Sedais, and she gets captured by the White Tower, who is the regular Aes Sedais. They're not rebelling. They're the main force of the Aes Sedai. And when that happens, you're like, no, 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 because like that's not the plot I want, right? Like I was asking for plot, yeah, but maybe not that plot, because Egwene and the Aes Sedai have been rebelling for 5 books at this point, and you're just waiting for them to finally win. And Egwene is clearly the strongest member of the rebel Aes Sedai forces. She's the leader of the rebel Aes Sedai forces. She's the one keeping them from rejoining the regular Aes Sedai. And with her being captured, you're wondering, is Lydia actually going to win? Is Egwene going to be stilled? What's going to happen next in this book series? Do the Rebel Aes Sedai arc just go nowhere? Was it for nothing? And it's pretty tragic. It's a tragic end because Egwene didn't actually have to do what she did to get captured. Like she could have just sent somebody else to do it, but she chose to do it herself for the first time. She was becoming a real leader. Like, I'm taking this responsibility as my own, and then it backfires on her immediately. And for a book with no plot, it certainly ends on a plot gut punch that sets up the next book, and you know the next book's going to deliver after it. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, and in my opinion, this is the most devastating cliffhanger that I've talked about so far. So the main character of the series is Aelin Galathynius. She is the lost queen of Terrasen, and she's fighting to get her kingdom back, essentially, and get rid of the Valg, who are like the big shadow monsters that are just destroying humanity and all magic wielders. And she does a great job of a lot of that in this book. She feels like she's on top of the world throughout this book. She's the strongest person in the world, basically. Her fire magic is amazing. She's destroying everybody in fights. She's planning brilliantly. And then at the end of this book, it all comes crashing down when her Aunt Maeve, the Fey Queen of Dornell, comes to Aurelia and confronts her on the beach. And the book ends with Aelin getting whipped, which she has trauma from before the series began. She's like terrified of getting whipped because she was a slave who had been whipped for a year straight, basically. And then she gets shackled, and I'm talking like heavy shackling, like her legs, arms, waist are all shackled, and Maeve puts an iron mask on her face and stuffs her in an iron coffin, closes the lid, and puts her on a ship and takes her back to Dornell, away from Aurelia. And it's heartbreaking because it's like she is the main character of the series. Now, it's not a single point of view series. There's plenty of other characters in the series, a lot of point of views, but she is the main character of the series. And to end the second to last book, the third to last book actually, because Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn are kind of split into 2 books, but they take place at the same time. To end with her being captured and taken away by somebody who isn't even considered like the main antagonist of the series is just heartbreaking and cruel, and uh, it seems like a lost cause at this point because how are you going to stop the second powerful? How are you going to get her back from the second most powerful person in the world in Maeve? It's crazy, and it's very traumatizing ending, and it shook me to my core. And the character's reactions to her kidnapping is heartbreaking. Yeah, just this one was a gut punch, and it made me so bad at Maeve, and it made me like really want to see her lose essentially. So yeah, I literally loved the end of this book because it was shocking. I didn't see it coming, and Look, I knew Maeve was up to no good by this point, so it's not like I didn't know Maeve was a bad guy. Like, it was pretty clear she was, and I knew that there was going to be something at the end of the book between these two because that's what this book was building to. Maeve was in the background doing stuff, but I did not expect that. Like, I just didn't expect her to, get kidnapped and beat and abused and shackled. Like, I did not expect that at all. It was insane. It's just an insane ending, and one of the best cliffhangers I've ever read. Okay, and then we got to talk about Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the second book in the Red Rising series. And this book ends on like a victory celebration, right? But not really, because somebody in the victory celebration ends up betraying Darrow and the cause, and a bunch of people are killed. And then Darrow is captured, similar to Aelin and Egwene. These are like the three captured arcs here, and stuffed in a box, essentially, and then brought to a dungeon. And that's how the book ends. And it's heartbreaking because Darrow had won. He had won the big battle. He had won the big climax, and this was supposed to be a celebration. And maybe I should have saw it coming, but I just didn't. I was like, oh, they're celebrating now. Something will happen, but it won't be this. And it was this. And it was very Red Wedding-esque. It was almost like George R.R. Martin wrote this one. That's how it felt to me. It was unfair, but also like tragic at the same time. But it also made a lot of sense to set up Morningstar, and it was a great hook for Morningstar. This one really worked for me. But let's talk about book number 10. And speaking of George R.R. Martin, we gotta talk A Dance with Dragons. This cliffhanger happened 15 years ago now. Jon Snow has been dead in A Song of Ice and Fire now for 15 years. We still don't know what happens to him. Now, granted, it's probably going to be what happens in the show. He's probably going to come back to life somehow. But we don't know how exactly yet. And we don't know what it's going to mean, because death and coming back to life, there's a giant cost in the A Song of Ice and Fire books. Jon Snow won't be the same if he comes back. On top of that, we don't know the entire mystery of why they killed him. We can take guesses at it. There's pretty good guesses, but we don't know why. It's a giant cliffhanger, and a lot of people don't know that. That is how the fifth book ends. People that only watch the show, they don't realize that, yeah, the last book that George had actually written ends with Jon Snow's death. But there's also an epilogue, and in the epilogue, Kevin Lannister is killed by Varys. And so it's like a double cliffhanger. You get a cliffhanger to end the book, and then you get a cliffhanger to end the epilogue. And both have massive stakes going forward in the series. And who knows if we'll ever actually get to read Winds of Winter. I am of the belief that at one point in time, we will be able to read Winds of Winter. I think it will be finished. And even if it's not finished, I think it'll still be released. Because if what George has said is true, he's already written 1,100 to 1,200 manuscript pages of it. So, like, I just feel like we will get that book at some point. I don't think we'll ever get A Dream of Spring, ever. Like, I don't think that's possible. But I do think we eventually will get Winds of Winter. But just know that Jon Snow has been dead for 15 years, and it's a problem. And it's one of the best cliffhangers I've ever read, because it is quite shocking when it happens. But even if you have seen the show and you know it's going to happen, it's still worth reading. It's still a great cliffhanger. And those are my 10 favorite cliffhangers. Let me know down below what your favorite cliffhanger is. Let me know if you've read any of these cliffhangers. Let me know if you agree or disagree on any of them. And as always, thanks for watching.